Thank you very much, and hopefully you can hear me as well. I'm different from Chris because I really like a microphone, right? So I may end up singing to you or something. So welcome to this event this afternoon. And just to set the record straight, my accent is not Irish, as I've already been accused of. It's Scottish, right? And I'm very proud of it. So I even brought some typical Scottish weather along for you today. The suntan is from Spain, it's not from Scotland, right? Okay. Okay, that's all out the road. So I'm taking this opportunity to talk to you today to explain some of the change of direction, I guess, for Foxconn in the Czech Republic. We have been in the Czech Republic for something like 17, 18 years, but our business has changed as all of our businesses are changing. And yesterday I was talking to some MBA students from the States, and it reminded me of a story that I told them. And it goes back to when I was at university, and microprocessors had barely been thought of at that point. That just shows you how old I am, right? So, but my project at university was to make a microprocessor make music. And unfortunately, it wasn't an Intel microprocessor. It was a Motorola M6800. That probably doesn't mean much to you. So the output from this processor was a square wave that I adjusted the frequency of to make the music. And if you've ever heard the Scottish bagpipes, it sounds like a square wave, right, coming out of a microprocessor. So it was coming from Scotland, that was very pertinent to what we did. And you wonder why I'm telling you this story. But some years later, I was talking, I worked with Compaq, some of you will remember them. Compaq had a vice president who came over from the States to Scotland, where I was working at the time, to learn some of the business and procurement. And his name was Tim Cook. Some of you, again, may recognize the name Tim Cook. So Tim and I became best friends, obviously. And I explained to him in the conversation about my project and how I had made this device make music. And I explained to him how, obviously, the next step was to store music on devices and make it portable for people. And then the next thing, he went to Apple. So basically, I take full credit for the iPod. I think I am responsible. And as I say, my children choose to believe that story. Some of it is true. Anyway, back to the presentation. What I would like to do today is just talk to you about change, because change is dramatic and it's accelerating, as you all appreciate. And Foxconn's business in the Czech Republic has typically been manufacturing or assembly of products, and that's what we've done, whether it's PCs, servers, or whatever. And that will continue for many numbers of years to come, of course. But we have to look at the way that the industry is changing and the way that the requirements of the industry are changing. And the example that is probably easiest to understand is that a desktop is no longer the size that a desktop used to be. So before, it was important that you had the regional capability from a logistics perspective, but with the reduction in size of desktops, it is now far more feasible to transport it from somewhere else, like China, for example. So that puts a great deal of pressure on us as a company. And we have to try to look at different ways that we can compete and change our business. And that is really the thinking behind the Generation 2 or G2 businesses that we have here. So I'll go through briefly these different businesses, but there's not a lot of detail, but because that's the type of person I am. But it will hopefully give you a picture that we can paint that shows the direction that Compaq is moving in and trying to change its business. So first off, we'll start with the company we've created called Foxconn DRC, and some of the members of the DRC team are here today with us as well. And it's a really important part of what we're trying to do. We try to, certainly within the Czech Republic, we try to form an anchor, if you like, that allows us to keep a solid base and a persistent base within the Czech Republic. If we rely solely on manufacturing and assembly, then that isn't necessarily going to happen, because the customers that we use can up sticks and go somewhere else, somewhere cheaper or whatever. But if you've got the R&D, and that's what the DRC, it's the Design and Research Centre, if you've got the R&D capability in the region, in the country, then it begins to solidify the whole entity that you have here. So we created this entity, and we had to really do it within Prague. I'm based in Kutná Hora, that some of you may know, which is a beautiful place about an hour away. But the talent, to bring the talent to the DRC, we had to create an entity within Prague. And that's been done. And there are in excess of 50 engineers that have been employed within the DRC today. And they're beginning, it's been a couple of years now, but they're beginning to get a foothold in some of the engineering services that they provide. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of the spin-offs that we talk about. But you can see from the slide there that it's hardware, it's software, and it's manufacturing capabilities that they're looking at. But we want to use what they can develop back into the manufacturing field. As we feel the pressure within manufacturing, we can use the DRC to generate additional businesses in different markets, perhaps, than we've traditionally been working with. The second entity that we created, again, a couple of years ago, this was all done about 2 years ago, is Foxconn Fortec. And Foxconn, again, there's some representatives from Fortec here. And we've changed direction for Fortec a couple of times, but we need to look internally at the way that we go about our manufacturing. We want to be able to leverage off the massive resources that Foxconn has worldwide. We have something like 1.2 million employees, mostly in China, of course. But we want to focus their attempts, focus their efforts on automating and introducing robotics and automation into the manufacturing processes. Now that's important for us internally, but equally we'd like to be able to use that and commercialize that and sell that out to other customers and leverage off those skill sets that we've got there. The other area that they're looking at, industrial IoT and Internet of Things, again, it's important for us. And you'll hear that part of what they were trying to do is add sensors to existing equipment to get the information, whether it's temperature or vibration or humidity or whatever that's coming, and getting a smartness associated with that. It's fine getting the signals and the different parameters from these sensors, but you then begin to have to utilize and intelligently apply something to that to do something with it, whether it's doing preventative maintenance because the vibration levels are too high or whatever. I mean, there's a number of different aspects, obviously, for industrial IoT. But again, it's another important element for us. We've got the DRC, we've got this focus, this internal focus, at this point anyway, that can allow us to satisfy our requirements. From the DRC, one of the areas that is a spin-off, effectively, is one that's we believe strongly has got great potential, shall we say, and it's fairly obvious, to be perfectly frank. We all know that electric vehicles are coming our way. We all know that energy is a really important factor in electric vehicles and the infrastructure around supporting electric vehicles or autonomous vehicles. At the moment, that's probably holding us back more so in general. But there's without doubt that it's coming. I have a friend across the road who has got a Tesla SUV, I think it is, which is really, really fast, I have to say. But the infrastructure to support electric vehicles has to be expanded. And the battery container system, or the energy management system that FITA, which is a joint venture company that is spun off effectively from the DRC, is really key to some gas stations or petrol stations, whatever you would call them, having the capability to have the energy storage available to electric vehicles at any time. They can't always connect straight into the power grid or whatever, and this gives them the opportunity to provide that service to customers in the future as it expands. But without doubt, it's change, and change is coming to us all, and this is just one other factor. My father worked in the electric generation business, shall we say, and again, many years ago. I find the older I get, I begin to reflect more about my youth. But one of the things that he said was that if only we could find a way to store the electricity that we generate, because he could see very clearly that when a popular TV program was on, that when the adverts came, everyone would go and switch on their kettle, and the demand for electricity surged. And that's a fact, that's what we will see, and that's what we see in every country. But and they ended up doing hydroelectric systems to store the electricity and release it into things like that. But it's not exactly, it's an expensive process. This is the way at the moment, this is the current method that we would have to store electricity for those requirements as they come on. And then we come to SafeDX. Martin mentioned already that Foxconn wanted, and they believe strongly, and again we've seen it from Chris's presentation, the amount of data that we are using and the amount of data that we are going to use is an enormous, it's a deluge, I think was the word that Chris used. And it's phenomenal, it's exponential about the requirements for data in general. So we saw, I guess, 3 years ago, the requirement for data centers, or a data center, certainly within Prague, within the Czech Republic. And we combined we being manufacturing people or assembly people or whatever, we didn't really have any knowledge whatsoever. Some would argue we still don't, but we still didn't really have any experience of what a data center and what the services that were required from a data center needed to be. So we combined with KKCG, who had already experience. They have another company, DataSpring, that have experience in that. They were well on with the development of the data center, the picture that you can see at the bottom there. It took us about a year, 10 months to a year, to actually get to the point of having a first-class data center, a tier 3 data center that is SafeDX. And it was meant to be the start, and it is the start of some of the data center capabilities that we need going forward. We're using it for KKCG purposes, for some of the companies that are part of KKCG, like Saska, for those of you that know the lottery in Czech. We also use it for our internal manufacturing requirements, where we're transferring those data center requirements up to Prague from Kutná Hora and Pardubice. And equally, the other company that we have is Sharp, that Foxconn purchased again a year and a half ago, something like that. We're transferring their data centers from Hamburg over to Prague, and that will happen over the next few months in there. So you can see that we're beginning to position ourselves. We're doing it internally, which makes sense, and we're also beginning to make it available to others as well. So when we begin to talk to Intel, people at Intel, who's a massive name in the industry, of course, it's a huge step for us, and it's a great combination for us to be able to demonstrate our capabilities in there. And that shows the handshake that I'm sure, I don't think it's my hand. But, one other company that we have, and just a relatively small venture at the moment, is SafeDX. You can see a theme appearing in the names that we have there. And SafeDX is our retail, or our company that we've created within Europe to give us the capability to leverage off China, to get all the benefits from China, but to give it into the European market and design and come up with solutions that are required within the European market. It's a great flexible tool. We have to make sure that we are leveraging off everything that Foxconn has to offer. And that is many, many things that they get involved in from China and from Taiwan. And we're trying to leverage off some of that to create this entity that we've got here. And again, we've got a couple of the people from SafeDX here today. And then the last word, perhaps. What's the future? And we look at some of the areas, and we've heard a little bit about artificial intelligence. We are already using artificial intelligence within the iPhone manufacturing system over in China. The inspectors that we use for the cosmetic standards over there were numbered in thousands, literally thousands of inspectors that were doing all of this. They are being replaced by AI systems that allow us to focus and consistently come up with a quality standard product for something like the iPhones that we manufacture. But the other two areas that I've got there are the 8K system, the TV standards. Most of you have probably heard of 4K, and some of you will have a 4K system. I don't, I can't afford them. But they are coming, it is coming. 8K will give you something like 16 times the number of pixels compared to HD, for example. I hope those numbers are right. And it's the resolution that we're really talking about there. Is it something that we need now? Probably not, but it's coming, and it's change, and it's more and more data that's associated with that kind of definition. But I think more exciting in many respects is the 5G aspects, the 5th generation network that we're introducing. Again, most of you will be very familiar with the term 4G, and most of us use that. But the next generation is coming, it is being developed. In the UK, they reckon that the network will be started, and they've already started it, but it will be introduced by the end of 2019, 2020, somewhere around that time scale. And you're beginning to see more and more data being required in there. I think the difference between 5G and 4G is the band that they use, the radio frequency bands that they use. And it's a far higher dedicated band that they focus on in 5G, which allows far higher, greater transfer of data. So I think we're somewhere about 20 times faster than 4G. And when you think about downloading a movie, instead of taking a minute, it'll take 5 seconds. I mean, it'll be very, very fast. There are limitations to it, of course, and we'll see a proliferation of smaller antenna, and you'll see repeater stations that will be put about the place, so we need, because you don't have the same distance that can be covered by the 5G. But basically, it is coming, and it will require more and more data requirements. So hopefully you begin to get a picture of Foxconn. We were a manufacturing and assembly plant, but we're now getting involved in a whole load of different areas and leveraging off our parent company over in China and Taiwan. It's important for us as a business to develop and to continue to change, and we believe that these are the things that allow us to do that.